Hello, this is Lynn Jordan with I Love Romance Novels, and today I am so honored to be able to talk with Carmen Schober, and she is a author of inspirational romance for modern women, and I think that is something that is sorely needed today
Yeah.
because we all know what the world's been doing. So welcome, Carmen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lynn, for having me on here. I love romance. So I sounds like I'm in the right spot.
And today we're going to talk about your book, After She Falls. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah.
And how did you come? Tell us about this book. How did you come to write this book?
Yeah. So After She Falls is actually my debut novel. So it was the first book I ever had published back in 2021. So it's about a year and a half old now, which is weird. Sometimes it feels like it's been forever. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday. But After She Falls came to be because of a screenwriting class that I was taking about 6 years ago. I had finished graduate school. I was at home pregnant with my first baby, my daughter, and I still wanted to keep like taking classes and doing writing and stuff. I just didn't really know exactly in what capacity, but I took a screenwriting class through the New York Film Academy. And it was just an introduction, nothing too involved, but really fascinating to learn how the difference between novel writing and screenwriting, and to really like get immersed in the process of screenwriting. And one of our assignments was to create a scene based off of our favorite movie. So I picked Rocky, and I thought through like, how could you modernize Rocky? And so I made in this scene, it was, contemporary 2019, whenever it was that I was writing it, or no, would have been like 2017. And a female protagonist. She was a mixed martial artist instead of a boxer. Different struggles than Rocky, but like same kind of idea of like this person who has this dream, who's in this position where it seems like, they've squandered it. There's really not that much likelihood that they're going to be able to achieve the things they want to achieve. But of course, like the opportunity of a lifetime comes and all of that. So that's what I started with as a scene in a screenplay. And when I was done with it, I was like, this is pretty good. Like, this is actually pretty interesting, like this idea. And so I built it out into a novel, since that's what my background was. I studied creative writing, novels primarily. And yeah, I mean, I just built upon this idea of the ultimate underdog, but obviously it just hits a little bit differently because it's a woman, because she's Cuban rather than Italian. She's in contemporary times rather than, Rocky. I hate to say Rocky's like vintage, but it's coming up upon that. And so it just is like a nod to that story, but taken for, the modern woman can like appreciate this sort of determined, fiery female protagonist who has to rebuild her life. And an important piece I'll just mention here is it does have some elements of like domestic violence. That's kind of the storyline, is she married the wrong guy. This guy she ended up with ended up derailing her career and abusing her and basically making her life miserable. And the book begins with her finally making the decision to leave. And so if domestic violence is like a trigger for you, it's something to be aware of, but it's also like fairly expository, if that makes sense. Like the book there's not all these like graphic scenes of violence or abuse, but it does get intense at times. So that's just something to keep in mind. But it is a blend of women's fiction and romance. So some of those deeper themes, but also a very driving romantic element as well.
It's very interesting. I haven't finished it, but I've read portions of it.
Very cool. I didn't know you were reading it. So yeah,
I was, yes.
you have an idea.
I do. Well, you said you started this in what, 17?
Think so.
What do you wish you had known that you know now, you'd known back then?
A good question. So much, so much. I've had 3 children since then too, and I've just had a very real growing up fast kind of thing. Like, I don't know. It's the best way to describe it is I crammed a lot of life into the last 5 years and achieved a lot of things that I wanted to achieve, which was writing books and having a family. And I wish now, looking back on it, that I had kept the perspective more consistently, that it's primarily about telling stories that will resonate with people and be powerful and impactful, and enjoying that process. At some point along the way, probably because I had a 2-book deal and I had very close together deadlines, I kind of lost sight of why I write. And I just kind of felt like I was writing just to achieve, if that makes sense. Like, easy to get in the hamster wheel of like, next deadline, next book deal, next paycheck, next wave of readers, like just thinking about my career versus thinking about why I love writing. And I think if I would have stayed in touch with that, I think that just would have, like, just looking back now, I wish I would have, like, lessons were learned along. Maybe I needed to learn the lesson this way. Maybe that's the only way I would do it. But yeah, I think one of my favorite books is called The War of Art. And he talks about that a lot, where if you start to get into your art because of how you want it to like pay off and how you want people to perceive you and all of this, it loses some of its like shine for you. And I think for other people. And so that's something now, as I look to the future, I'm really trying to like stay connected to the power source of like, why do I do this? What's the point? What makes a good story? And do it because I love it, not because, I'm trying to like prove something to myself or to other people. Easier said than done, right? Because I mean, we all
Right.
want, writers want, you want the book deal, you want the success. And I'm not saying like, don't care about it, but it's like with anything, right? Like C.S. Lewis talks about it too, like doing something for the love of doing it is always the better experience. And so
Yeah, it's easier to get caught in the business mindset,
yeah,
and it actually takes the joy out of it.
it does. Like, the pressure is real, but you have to do something with that pressure that's productive. And in my case, I channeled it more towards like, I'm just going to work harder and achieve and get all wrapped up in like, if I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't as good as I think it could have been. So what I wish I would have known, that I hope other people keep in mind, is if you're a writer, that's because you love writing, and the rest maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't, whatever. Like, fundamentally, you write because you love writing, and the act of doing what you love, I think, always leads to something good. And you don't have to put all this pressure on yourself to decide what that is or to make it happen. You just can just write.
Okay, well, so now, what's your publication schedule look like now? Have you backed off?
Yeah, I backed off. I have this idea that I'm really excited about. But I've gone back and forth on it, whether I wanted to write it as a screenplay or as a book. And I've landed finally on a book, because I've been researching the screenplay thing. Like, it's, even though I took a class, I didn't learn anything about like selling it or anything like that. So I've been looking into that, and it's actually less and less of a practice to like write a screenplay and sell it. Fewer people are doing that. It still happens, but mostly what is happening is movie production companies and production companies in general, if they make television or whatever, they'll buy the rights to books or to short stories, or things that basically either they just really think they're very they're going to work well, or they have a track record of, people are interested in them and will likely pay money to go, to stream it or whatever. So my new project, which kind of loosey-goosey on the timeline, because like I said, I'm not going to do this thing again where I commit to like a book a year. Just, my kids are really little. I just did that back to back, and I'm glad I did, but I'm not really, it's not really my process either. I don't know. I'm not a book a year person, at least not right now. It takes me a little longer to I like to go through like 3 or 4 drafts. So, I just can't, if you're producing a book a year, you're basically writing it in like 4 months because you need to send it back and they need to edit it, et cetera, et cetera. So with this new project, it would be a series. It would again be kind of a mix of women's fiction and romance, but also like a family drama would expand out with more characters. And it's going to kind of center around this Cuban family, really interesting family dynamics that sort of inadvertently gets entangled with the Cuban mafia and like set in today's time. So very like almost like a modern mafia story. And not quite as dark as what probably people are used to, a little more humor and a little more inspiration, but still, get into like the very real stakes of situations like that still do happen. I'm half Cuban. So my family has a history of not involved with the mafia, but aware of things at play, and just, whenever there's like a subculture, that's always, I think, good inspiration for stories. Subcultures make for that.
Oh, that sounds marvelous. I know the mafia thing is big right now. So
yeah, people like the mafia. They're very interested in it. So I'm doing my own version of that. That's kind of what I like to do. I like to think of something like my first book was, Rocky, but with a twist. My second book was Fixer Upper, Joanna Gaines, but with a twist. And so I kind of like to find that thing that's identifiable, but then, make it different, make it unique, make it a little more feminine. So we'll see. Hopefully, let's see, it's 2023. It's July 2023. I would love to have that thing out in the world, maybe early 2025. Ideal.
Oh, good.
But again, I'm living La Vida Loca, but not like the good way. Like I'm not going to kill myself. I'm just going to write a book that I know is very good, and then I'm going to leave the rest to God.
Or writing with 3 small kids. I really admire you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was crazy. Like that's another, like, I don't know. I'm glad I pushed through and I did it. My second book actually sold really well and actually got a lot more attention than my first. But I wrote it while I was pregnant and while I was postpartum. And it was hard. Like looking back, that's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I wouldn't advise it. Like if it happens to you, push through and do it. But if you can, I would say don't. Like, just it's hard on your brain. Like right now, even as I sit and think about writing, it's such a different experience than when I was trying to think about writing with a newborn baby. Like it's just, I don't know if you have children, but it's that your mind is just, at least for me, it moves a lot slower.
Yeah, well, you can't do anything with a newborn baby.
No,
At
they
least
don't
I
care.
couldn't.
They don't care about your deadline. Not at all. And they're not supposed to. It was very challenging, but I am very happy with that book and how everything turned out. It's just, yeah, I guess my philosophy again with writing, maybe this will help somebody, is like, it's a hard road. And even after you get the agent, even after you get the book deals, even after you get the royalties, it's still a lot of work. Like, unless you're Stephen King, unless you're Colleen Hoover, like you're working very hard to make like a normal amount of money. Like, you're not like, it's not like this very like easy job that pays super well. So for most people, right? Maybe you will be Stephen King, maybe you will be Colleen Hoover. I don't know. But for that reason, I think it's important to keep that perspective of like, do it because you love it, do it in a way that makes sense for your life. Like, work hard and be disciplined and try to write every day, but there's really not that great of a reason to like sacrifice all your time and all your energies into a writing career. Like, a writing career should make you happy at the end of the day. Your books should make you happy. That's the good thing, I think, even though I did go through the gauntlet with writing my books really close together, is I'm really proud of both of them. So I think, if you can say that to the end of your writing journey, that's important.
Yeah, definitely. If you're going into writing for the money, you're in the wrong job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you get creative with it, I'm a writing coach. I make decent money doing that. I've written for other publications that pay me like a salary. Like, being a writer can be definitely a job that is sustainable, and you can make a good little paycheck and have flexible hours. You're your own boss. Like, there's lots of perks. But yes, exactly as you said, like, if you think it's going to be like you write a book and then, everybody's lining up to buy it and get your signature, like all this, like that happens to some people, but not to the vast majority of writers. It's going to be a long road. So you got to enjoy that road, got to make the most of it.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell us that we haven't talked about today?
I think the main thing that you all just need to know before we say goodbye is that After She Falls is $3.99 on Kindle right now. So if you're a Kindle reader, it's a great deal. I think, I'm not sure, Lynn and I were talking about how Amazon is kind of loosey-goosey about sales and stuff. I don't know when the price will go back up. But when it does, it's going to be like $13, which I think is kind of a lot for a Kindle. So if you want a new read, if you like women's fiction, romance, you want something just a little bit different because it's about a mixed martial artist. It's got a faith element. It's just, and like Lynn said, it's just kind of different. It's probably, if you read a lot of romance, you will find things that you like and that are recognizable, but it will also probably just strike you as a very different kind of story. After She Falls could be your next read for just $4.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.